let's go. Chuck, Cranney, lovely to see you again. We haven't seen each other for a few months since the Khabib Gage fight. A lot has happened since then. Obviously, with the coronavirus around, the world has slowed down or stopped at least. And but UFC still plodding on, still putting on really good shows. And as I was saying earlier, I think Dana White, he still thanks God that he came up with the idea of the Fight Island in Abu Dhabi, because I don't know, somehow he's still able to put on shows. It's just unbelievable, and the quality of fights is
be amazing.
It's just amazing. So it would be absolutely fantastic if we could talk about several fights today from the last couple of weeks. And I think we're going to start with the one that I'm most excited about is the Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. What are your thoughts, Cranney? What did you think about it?
I mean, I've gone back and watched that fight so many times. I think since the event, it was just it felt a little bit sort of look at the big picture. It did feel like one of those career-defining fights for Max. It was a bit like when you see some of the amazing performances of sort of Anderson Silva back in the day, and those fights that go down to become legendary, and you never get sick of them. Or BJ Penn fights back in the day. There's so many fights you could point to that were similar, but yeah, to me that was an all-time great performance, I thought, by Holloway, but just a fantastic fight as well.
Chuck?
Yeah, same thing pretty much. It is like Cran said, defining fight, but it was also like not out the coming out part, but it was showing he's at that next level now. He's kind of he's definitely hit his prime. Because how old is he now? 29?
Mm-hmm.
29, yeah. And you can see it. It's like all that experience before has come to this moment, and it's just like he looked unstoppable, didn't he?
And I think it's not only his best performance, but I think it's one of the best performances ever in the UFC.
Especially at that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, full dominance, especially around boxing. I mean, the level of his activity and flow and just the pressure was just unbelievable. And obviously, we're going to talk about statistics later on. But just looking at him, I think I was shaking a few hours after, because I was so happy to see this sort of performance. I knew he's capable of it because he had several really good performances in the past, but it was just he dismantled Calvin Kattar,
didn't ever give him time to set, did he? Because that's every time he wanted to set that big right hand, it's like boop, just kept throwing that jab in his face, moving around, and he just couldn't get his faculties at all for it.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to jump in, just when you sort of, as you said, Remy, about the dominance, I mean, have you ever seen a 50-42 on a judge's scorecard? I can't remember it. I don't remember a 50-42 or and even 50-43s.
Especially for a main event for a top 10 guys as well. That makes it even more,
But what's really interesting as well, because you mentioned the final score, but if you go round by round, I think all of the rounds were 10-8, but the last one was 10-9. So after 4 rounds, after 4 rounds of being, demolished and destroyed so much, Kelvin was still able to slightly improve in the last round. I mean, because I did a little bit of research on him, and apparently he trained with Diaz brothers for some time. Yeah,
which is very much. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people were making the comparisons in that kind of volume style, weren't they? Saying that there were similarities with the Diaz brothers, and that I heard people saying he's taken the mantle from the Diaz brothers as the sort of the best volume striker of all time. And I think just I'm sure you've got some of the numbers, Remy, but the statistics that came out of that fight were some of the real shocking things about it, I think.
So guess how many punches, how many significant strikes he threw in the whole fight?
I did see it. I can't remember. get my computer up.
445.
It's a lot. Because he had the last record, I believe, and then he just smashed it this time.
I think the last one was 290 something. So he smashed it. And I think attempted strikes.
I think it was Kobe, wasn't it? Against Lawler. It was between him and Holloway for the punches.
Yeah.
But
what's really interesting that he threw 140 significant strikes in the fourth round.
It's ridiculous. I think that when you look at, you've probably seen it. Those graphs where they look at Holloway's output, that he's one of the few fighters that it tends to increase as he goes on. But I think to Chuck's point about how he never really let him set to get that right hand. I mean, I think that was part of the key to it, though, wasn't it? That he started much faster than he usually does.
Just nullified that power.
Yeah, and it was straight away that volume.
Unbelievable. And what I like, because one of you mentioned that he's there's this sort of touch with with jab or cross, and it really reminded me of the way Mickey Holtz can fight. So that's the glory kickboxing fighter, and that's his style. When you have your opponent covered a little bit, you go touch, boom, you go for the body, and that's what he did. It was touch, and then he demolished the body. Fair play to the other guy that he didn't go down, because I felt these. I think he threw 3 spinning body kicks as well, and they landed. They landed. Oh,
and they're not pleasant.
No. And in the midst of this, he still finds time to look at the DC and all the commentators and start chatting to them. And in the meantime, I'm the best boxer in the UFC. I'm the best boxer in the UFC.
But isn't that something as well that I think, when we look at these great performances, it's where you see that kind of amazing mix of beautiful technique and execution, but also there's that sort of, that raw fighter mentality that you see from, I know that it's maybe a badge of honor for the sort of Hawaii fighters as well, since BJ Penn and the Just Scrap days and all those kinds of things. Yeah. But there's definitely something to it where it was so raw to see him doing that, but it was also such a mark of quite how much better he was than Calvin Kattar, I think.
Yeah. But obviously we have to remember how tough you had to be, because I really thought that in the fourth round
could have stopped that. Yeah.
That Herb will stop it, or he will go down. I really thought that he will. After this elbow, I thought that's it. But he managed to stay until the end of the round, and he just managed to finish the fight. It's unbelievable.
I wonder as well, because we're putting so much focus on Holloway, I feel for Calvin Kattar though, because I think, I've got his record up here, and I think just when you have a look at it and you think that, is there maybe an argument that yes, he's good, he's had those highlight reel kind of knockouts, Jeremy Stevens, but is there something to be said that 22-4 Dan Ige, it's a big jump from Dan Ige up to Max Holloway, and I think the danger then is it can sound disrespectful to Calvin Kattar, but we do have to look at the fact that aside from Zabit, where he lost, he hasn't fought anybody on that level. Ricardo Lamas, but he retired.
That's the only thing they bring up, isn't it? Is that Zabit fight, which he lost anyway. And they go, oh, he started getting momentum at the end. He did, but ultimately, he still lost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is his? Yeah, what's his record now then?
25-5.
25-5. But who we fought? Yeah, Dan Ige.
It's not great. Chris Fishgold again. He lost to Renato Moicano. Moicano's good.
Oh yeah.
With his ups and downs. But I think it's really tempting to, the other problem, and I think we'll get to this when we talk about the Holloway fight, is that it's very tempting to see a fight like that and say, well, he's done. but you do have to ask, and he's really not. He was on a 2-fight win streak before this, but you do have to ask yourself, where do you go in the division when you've lost mentally and physically in that way against someone? What do you do next?
So they've taken a lot out of them, that fight as well. You see those type of fights, well fighters, and that's it. All the fights after that are never the same.
Yeah, but if now I'll change the subject a little bit. So we talk about how good Max was. We talk about how tough Kattar had to be. Now go back in past, the last few years, how tough Volkanovski is. He won with Max twice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Holloway has improved
arguably
so much in
the second, but
yeah, obviously, it was close fight. No matter how you look at it, it was an extremely close fight. But still, he won. How?
Yeah.
What do you think that was? What do you attribute this to?
Maybe he's just good.
I think there's a theory that I think that I suppose that I'm just a bit intrigued by sort of this whole thing about him not sparring. I think that people are saying, I think it shows the kind of fickle nature of MMA fans, because when the pandemic hit and Max was talking about, he was training in his garage and he wasn't sparring, and that people were really raising questions about, is he going to be well prepared for Volkanovski, and is he? And then when the losses happened, you heard that talk a little bit, but it wasn't really picked up on. But then the second he comes in and looks brilliant against Calvin Kattar, everybody says that's the reason, because he's not sparring, and look what it did for Robbie Lawler when he stopped sparring. And I don't know, I don't buy into that too much, but I think that there has to be a rematch with Volkanovski. There's nowhere else you can go.
No. Well, whoever who wins, because he's got Brian Ortega next, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's the argument. I think a lot of people have said that even if Volkanovski wins, he should still, Max Holloway should still have a go at the title again.
Yeah, definitely. I think after a performance like that, you got to. It's just be.
Yeah.
I mean, who can you put over him after a performance like that?
Yeah. But going back to.
Sorry, Remy.
Going back to sparring, there's so much truth in this. And I had so many discussions with a lot of fighters. It's not about really how hard you go. It's a lot of people say playing, that it's important to play, throw like 30-40% of your power, just like they do in Muay Thai, just like they do in Thailand.
Yeah, because you think they're fighting every week, so they got to. You can't afford to.
So in a way, what's the point of going really, really hard during a fight camp when you enter the ring and you have potentially some sort of head trauma already? But I you know what, I wouldn't want to be Calvin the day after the fight. I mean, the headache and 140 strikes in one round.
Yeah, that's a lot.
With these 4-ounce gloves.
Yeah, I think that we'll probably come back around to this when we get to the Conor fight. But I always think of that John Kavanagh quote where he would talk about Conor's, that flow sparring that he would do with Artem Lobov, and that he would say it was about upgrading the software without damaging the hardware. And I always thought that was a really good way of looking at it. But again, I think we'll come back to that when we talk about McGregor, because for every fight that you can point to where that's the case and somebody's had a great performance from not sparring, and you can think about Forrest Griffin when he fought Anderson Silva and got knocked out with a jab, and everybody said it was because he'd taken a concussion in the run-up to the fight. I think that we're quite fickle around that. But what it shows is that we don't necessarily know the best way to train in MMA at the moment. Not really. We have theories, but we don't really know which is best, for a fighter's longevity, but also for their skill development.
Yeah, because you have to balance it out beautifully, because otherwise you might have an amazing career, but very short one. And, some fighters don't really care. They want to be remembered as, the best of the best, despite, being, injured terribly. look at. Well, in a way, it's about knowing how to not get punched as well.
Yeah,
Exactly. Mayweather.
Yeah, there you go.
Again.
Yeah. So obviously, it could be a trilogy, but it could be, potentially 3 wins for Volkanovski because he started throwing these cuff kicks
I was about to
in
say,
fights with Holloway, didn't he? Because it's a beautiful connection with Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fight as well. But let's go to UFC 257 and Hooker Chandler. Were you surprised at all? I mean, have you been following Hooker? Because I have to be honest, I haven't been following Chandler so much. I've been following Hooker from very early stages when he was still fighting, a kickboxer.
Yeah, I must have been following Chandler since his first Alvarez fight was the first time I think we heard of him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was around that time when Alvarez was like, Alvarez at his best. And I hadn't really heard of Chandler, so I was like, I think this might be another fight for Alvarez. And then that's when it says, got introduced to the MMA world and beat him. But I wouldn't say I was exactly over surprised because we know he's capable of that. We've seen him do it before, like with one of the brothers, Pitbull. Do you remember that knockout? Was that a couple of years ago? His explosiveness is just unreal. So the way he did it, if he was going to do it, it was like how he did it. But I was expecting more maybe from Hooker, but could that be because Chandler was just that good?
Well, we know what happens when one of the fighters puts a lot of pressure. It basically destroys all your planning and your game.
Especially when someone who's as explosive as Chandler, because Hooker would have known that. You can see his twitch, and every time he's going in, you're like, oh, he's just waiting for it.
Mm-hmm. And it was all about, you could see that Chandler was, completely like everything was, focused around landing that right hand. He had it cocked, he had it ready to go. And I think that
it's left, wasn't it?
What did he land at the putting down?
It was his, he tried to do like you kept seeing it. He kept looking like he wanted to shoot, but he was obviously trying to raise up with a punch, whether it be the overhand. I thought it was going to be the right, but then he kind of did like a sneaky down, pretended to go that, and he come with the left, didn't he? So it was left. It was the left hand. Yeah. It's quite.
It reminded me of the one that Masvidal threw against Darren Till.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so he went down, and then straight left. Well, left hook. Yeah, I think for me, Hooker looked so. I don't know. It's like deer in headlights. He just didn't know what to do. He was running away all the time. I could see that Chandler was getting a little bit frustrated. Like, come on, stop running away. And no. Go on, Cranney.
I just wonder, when I watched that I think some of it was about the stylistic kind of matchup. You've got to think about the body types couldn't have been more different. I think that Chandler's in some ways, I don't want to say undersized, but I think he's 5'6", 5'8", yeah. And that's a small guy, in the weight class. And I think that you were really starting to see, we were going to see how those styles played out in terms of, was Chandler going to go and look for a wrestling heavy, just take him down, wear him out, and then start to look for the strikes? Or was he just trying to land something big? And I think that it was going to go one of those ways. Either it was going to be a wrestling, clinic maybe, or it was going to be something lands big and then it turns into a brawl. But I agree. I think Hooker did just look like he was paralysis by analysis. Maybe he didn't open up. He didn't really throw much.
Because I thought at first, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I can see what he said. I thought he was basically backing up, hoping that he would shoot in, because I thought it was going to be a bit like that Ross Pearson moment because of the size. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's what I had an inkling. I thought it was going to be he was setting up some kind of knee, but
it's like he was
not.
luring him in for
Yeah.
something, and then an encounter very quickly. Yeah, and I love Dan Hooker. He's analysis, because I listen to his podcast as well, and he's just great. I mean, the whole bunch from this City Kickboxing gym, they're absolutely amazing. They're all animals. So
Do you believe the retirement? Do you believe that he's retired? Because he put his gloves down after the fight in the middle of the cage and retired.
Well, I don't think no one's heard from him, because I looked for any sort of interviews with him, and he hasn't released anything.
He's back in the gym. I've seen a photograph today. He's back in the gym.
Okay.
Training. So not that means anything, but I think that people were, again, I think it's this fickle nature that I think as soon as he did that, I understand that people will say, okay, well, he's done then, he's put his gloves down. But I mean, you've got to consider it's 2 fights straight, losing to Poirier, losing to Chandler. I personally don't see him getting to the title. I don't see a path. I think it's too crowded. So what do you do? Do you try and go down again to 145? No.
Too big.
What does he do?
Because now he's getting up. Because how old is he now then? Is he like 29, 30 or something?
He's 30.
30, yeah.
Still so young.
Yeah, you never know. Because we've seen this before with fighters for years. We've gone, I could never see him being champion. And then what do you know happens? Like, but Poirier, back in it like years ago, I would have never thought he'd be in that position he is now, to be honest. I knew he got better, but I didn't think we'd be like going, oh, he's the top 2 guy, or Bisping.
Yeah,
Bisping.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
So, there's a lot of people you just don't, and I don't know. I wouldn't count him out just yet. I'll say, just give it a few more years, see how he looks.
I'd like to think that he would. I'm sorry, Remy, carry on. Sorry.
I think stylistically, he really reminds me of Israel Adesanya as well. This like very tall, very skinny, long reach, keeping the distance, maybe not so cocky in his performances, but they train together. It's just he impressed me so much when he fought Paul Felder.
Yeah.
That was such a fight, and I just but even with Dustin, it was a war. Even though he lost, I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. So I'm really hoping he's not retiring, because he's too young. Unless because he had some injuries as well.
Yeah, no, this is true. I think you have to look at the fact. I mean, just when you were saying that, then Remy, I think the Paul Felder fight, the Dustin Poirier fight, the knockout to Chandler, win or lose, they've all taken a lot. He's taken a lot of damage, and I think that aside from the fact that we're saying about could he be Bisping, could he sort of somehow get this last minute fight for the title? I think that's I'd love it would be great to see, but it's such a sort of wild card, isn't it? That I think that realistically he's got two losses. I'd imagine that he may just get that that last fight on his contract, or the last fight of the UFC, assuming they don't cut him if he does decide to come back. I'd like to see him have one more. If he gets back in the win column, then maybe carry on. But if he looks at that chin is gone, I think leave the gloves in the cage again and then walk away.
Okay. Well, talking about chin that's gone, shall we talk about Conor McGregor? Dustin Poirier. Do you know what? Before we start, I have to say this. I've never been a massive Conor McGregor fan. I never liked his style of behavior outside of the cage. For me, it was unacceptable. Even though it sold fights, I am GSP fan. So for me, full respect the way you behave outside. You're a role model. Okay. However, I have to say, Conor McGregor impressed me so much. The way he behaved in the pre-fight marketing and promotion. I don't know what's changed. Everyone says that Khabib.
It's probably because all this trouble he's getting in, and he's like, I can't keep doing this. What's going to end? bad. But
Yes.
he's always been like that after fights. Generally, he's always been really respectful. But then I don't know. Before fight, I kind of almost like, do you reckon it lost an edge a bit doing that? Do you know when they say like about being a bit wild, like with Jones, he's a wild man and all that. You know, McGregor's a bit of that. And sometimes if you dampen suppress that wildness a bit, I don't know. You know.
I think you're maybe onto something there. I think that there's also the idea that, well, I mean, it's the idea that, you know, he maybe had to sell the fights earlier in the day, and he had to build his name, and this whole, you know, 60 G's baby or whatever it was, and all this sort of stuff. It was all about making the money and climbing the ladder. And I think now he's there, the fights sell themselves, right? We've all seen casuals or people that don't even watch MMA ever, you know, and I'm sure you had messages Saturday night, you know, you're watching the fights tonight, and you still see the sort of promotional power of McGregor. But I think Chuck's onto something as well, that he's getting in trouble outside of the cage. He has, you know, it's not going to help him when he's got, I think the day before the fight, I think it was announced that there was going to be a civil lawsuit, or, you know, some of his sort of legal problems are carrying on. And if he's still saying, you know, controversial things, it's certainly not going to help his case. And the wildness factor, I think there's something to that.
I think that there are several factors. First of all, he's got so much money. I mean, how hungry, how greedy did you have to be? At a certain point, you realize, why do I do this? I mean, I'm getting punched in the head, you know.
And I got a yacht.
Exactly.
I might just go back on that and chill.
Yeah, and he's got children now. That changes. That changes the fighter so much. You get a little bit softer. Obviously, not everyone, but I guess it does change. It does change you as you become a father. And I think he was humbled by all of these, you know, losses in the past, especially Khabib, because he misbehaved terribly, you know, prior to the fight and then afterwards as well. So it was a humbling experience for him a little bit, I guess.
When you say you're not a fan of him because of his stuff, what about his actual style? Are you a fan of his fighting style? So I always try to separate them a bit, because a lot of people go, I want them to lose, or they're not really concentrating, rather than I blank that out. I don't really give a shit at the time of the fight. I just want to see a good fight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious.
So I think he's an absolutely unique fighter. I think he's changed the face of UFC forever with you know what he did, you know, double champ, etc. But I don't think his fighting ability is so unique. He's far from being called, you know, GOAT. He's lost to, you know, not amazing fighters. I mean,
pretty good. If you think this last is in the UFC, what has been Diaz, Khabib, Poirier.
Yeah, but at the time Diaz hasn't been a champion, and he wasn't average. He was above average, but he wasn't, you know, they thought at the time on Conor McGregor's level. Conor McGregor thought that he would just win easily, and obviously he didn't. So obviously his cardio is not that great at times, and everyone is talking about this, you know, his left. Oh my God, look at his left! It's so amazing, and people will eventually learn how to deal with this if you only have one weapon, because all his game was set up around his left, wasn't it? So the way you position your opponents, the way you move around the cage, so they go to the right, the way his leg work, everything was based on this, you know, setting up of this massive left punch. And I watched an interview with Poirier a couple of days ago, and he said that what was a turning point in the fight when he got punched and he didn't really feel anything. And he thought, oh shit, that's not actually that bad. Because you have to remember, in 2016, he was punched only once with this left hand, and that left hand dropped him.
And he was in a much lower weight, so you know, you're more prone to being knocked out when you've cut that much weight.
Well, I think there were some other elements in there. I think there were some other sort of, you know, technical things that changed, because we're talking about his style, but I don't think it was the same style. I think that we still saw that that leaning on the left hand, it being, the front leg being planted quite heavy. And so we knew these were all things that people talked about in the Aldo fight, that he leans on that front leg, and so that he's going to be susceptible to the kicks. But there were also things that I think, do you remember when Conor used to start a fight, and as part of that pushing you against the cage and starting heavy with, like, starting fast, he used to throw a wild kick to start the fight.
Yes, back spinning front kick, yeah.
Yeah, hook kick or something like this, just to get you on the back foot and set the tone for the fight. Now, in this fight, we saw, I think, like a false start, didn't we? That there was this sort of like, they both, Conor tried to come across the cage, and Herb Dean sort of said, no, pushed him back, and it was this strange, soft start to the fight. But you didn't see this wild kick. You saw him relying on the boxing, and it did look slightly different. I think Remy's onto something, that falling in love with the left hand has got to the point where it's just looking for that left hand.
I think what pretty much what you just said then about starting, but throughout, I thought, when I said about being losing that edge, but that wildness, that's kind of felt like it's missing. Before, he would just, without confidence or just not even caring, he would throw some wild shit now and again, but it was kind of very held back in regards to what he's been like in the future. But I also think, going back to what you said with the leg kicks, I think that was just the fact of why that he couldn't get off that left. Like, he said they read it over time. They obviously read it this time. They're like, okay, calf kick, bam, and you just see it just dismantle him. He couldn't do it, like, because you're putting your weight on on your leg when you're going to throw it, and it wasn't there.
Yeah, and I think what set the fight a little bit as well, it was a massive factor. It was this takedown at the very beginning of the fight.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen Dustin Poirier shooting for takedown? Not really. And usually, and I think he went for double. And and then they were against the cage. There was a little. He tripped. He did.
It's like a double trip. It was like not a very conventional,
like a body lock. I think it was like a body lock with the trip. Yeah, and I think I think one thing we can say as well is, I think we're putting again so much focus on McGregor, and I think that's natural to do that. But I think some of this, what it shows is like how fast the game, to use McGregor's expression, but how fast like MMA is evolving. Because think back to that first fight, 2014. Who was throwing the calf kick apart from Ben Henderson? It just wasn't apart. Poirier himself was not really throwing it. I think there were one or I've gone back and watched some of his old fights, and I think there was one or two occasions where he was throwing the leg kick quite low, and you could see him playing with it. But I think what it showed is that Poirier has been there consistently, evolving, learning new techniques, adding them to his game, and McGregor's just stayed reliant on that left hand.
And I think what Poirier was, he was on the receiving end as well when he fought Gaethje. So he knew what sort of damage they cause as well. And I think what made it easier for Dustin Poirier is that they were both southpaw. So it made it just a little bit easier for him to do that. So I think a combination of this takedown and a little bit of grappling in the first round, and they were trying to throw these shoulder
the Cerrone, yeah.
It didn't work this time, did it, for Conor? But I think Conor won the first round.
Yeah.
On the scorecard, he won, but I think his legs were already so damaged that in the second round you could see the massive change. Because I watched. Do you know this Muay Thai guy? And his name is Damien Traynor.
Yeah, he's amazing. No. English guy, yeah. Slick as hell, very small. He obviously doesn't fight anymore, but like he's like a YouTube trainer now, and not YouTube.
He showed literally a couple of days after Conor McGregor fight. He showed footage of him teaching how to check these calf kicks. So they've been around. So I think it was a footage from 2006 or 7 in Muay Thai. And apparently it's not that difficult to check them, but you have to know how to do it. So what do you think Conor could have changed? Do you think things like switching his stance earlier on after literally being kicked once or twice?
Just like you said, it'd be a combination of the adjusting, I guess, your distance and getting away from them. Learning to check for one was the big one, because that was like literally the big story of it. I think was the actual was the leg kick. That was what it pretty much won him the fight, because when he went for him, because Poirier said, didn't he? He said he thought he hurt him with a punch, but it wasn't. It was the leg kick. He said it was only afterwards. That's why he went running in, because he thought, oh, he's stunned, but not the case at all.
And I think there's something to be said as well that, Poirier, it wasn't a perfect performance. I'm just, I'm not trying to be critical of it. It was an amazing performance, but you still saw that wildness of Poirier, where he did start to kind of open up, and that put me on the edge of my seat, because we know that it does only take one left hand from McGregor. And I think that there is still something to say that, when you say, what could McGregor have done differently? I don't want to say that happens that way every time, but I think one thing he could have done differently was fought more than once a year. I think he said it himself, he's not active enough. Look back at when did he fought right at the start of last year with Cerrone. And then the last fight with Khabib was the end of 2018. So
it was 2018, was it?
Yeah, it was October 2018, which is just crazy. And then his fight before that was, Eddie Alvarez was November 2016. So we're looking at 2 to 1 year between fights. Now, you guys will know a lot better than I will, but I would imagine if you're going to build up that conditioning in your legs to even be able to take normal leg kicks, you need to be in the gym consistently taking them. And I just can't imagine that he said himself, I need to fight more, but I don't think he was doing the right thing in or out of the cage.
What you just said then, the main thing he recognised from the fight was training for leg kicks, he said, didn't he? He said about, he's kind of joking in a way as well. He's like, I have to get the Thai thing and start like rubbing my shins down and stuff like that. But he's recognising, which is pretty cool. He was like saying, I'm going to have to, it's evolved and they went around so much, he said before. That's what he actually said. So he was like, I'm going to have to, he said, they're really good. I'm going to have to start like learning them a bit more and checking them. I think that's what he said in the press.
What I think will happen, because I still have huge respect for Conor McGregor. I still think he will be back, and I still think he will have a shot at the title, and potentially
still
he will still be a champion, because he's amazing. And I think now with his behavior outside the ring, looking at it, I mean, it made me cry a little bit after the fight when he had some words with Dustin, and then afterwards in the press conference, how he didn't say anything nasty.
Yeah,
there's nothing.
I think he recognises the crowd as well, his audience. I don't think if he would just jump in, it would just been so random in a way. Be like, "Fuck you, Dustin," just going that, and everyone was like, "All right, mate," like.
There's no
because
he's
been away.
Yeah,
it just wouldn't have made. Whereas before, it was the momentum was there, and people were like expecting him to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think it would have been a bit after his, especially his problems.
Yeah.
It's been a bit weird.
I mean, I think the other problem is what does it do for his legacy? Because I think that it does harm his legacy at this point. I think when he's got this crossover appeal. People that aren't necessarily hardcore fans know who he is. And the problem is that he's now lost that mystique with them. I think that it's a little bit like when we saw Anderson Silva lose twice, or Fedor when he lost against Verdum, and then with Dan Henderson and things like this. Once that mystique is gone, I don't think you get it back. And I think that McGregor will always be an attraction, but I would disagree with you, Remy, and I think it's a fair point, but I don't see him getting back to the title, because I think that other than maybe being gifted that title shot and talking himself into it a little bit, because I think that the mystique is gone, and I think that ultimately that he's not inside of other fighters' heads in the same way as he was when he fought Aldo or when he fought Chad Mendes, and I don't see him, that mental edge was such a big part of his game, that I don't being able to use it anymore. What
would you see after this now? Let's say you had to line them up. Who would you actually give McGregor? This is the...
Diaz.
Do you know what I mean? They say for my... I know everyone's... I don't know, just because I've seen it twice. For me, I know it's... I could take or leave it. If I'm being honest, the Diaz one, I've seen it twice.
Listen to
Chad,
that.
what?
We're saying.
Can you imagine Conor McGregor being civilized in press conference with Nate Diaz?
No, that would
Maybe
that might
the
relight
Conor
the
McGregor,
fight for it. Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
But does it work anymore? You know, do we care as much? I mean,
yeah, because we've had it.
Something new, but something similar. Like if it works out, I mean, you've got to think Masvidal is 34, and maybe McGregor going up to welterweight and fighting, you know, where these big name fights, because, you know, aside from being on the front of the last like video game, you know, it has to be a big name, and someone like Masvidal is a possibility, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know where he goes. I really don't.
No.
And I always thought before this, I was like, him and Gaethje, I was like, he would screw him up. But what's Gaethje's Uno? What does he love? Leg kicks. so that you're like, well, it could be a bit different to what maybe I predicted.
I don't think. Well, I think he should fight at least 2-3 times and win to be given a shot at the title. But you know how it works with Dana White absolutely adoring Conor McGregor. It's the money fight, as they say. And what if he wins with Dustin if they go for the third fight?
I don't know. But this is what I was about to ask. What were they going to do next for Dustin? Because he's obviously fighting for the title, but who would that be? Because it's not, to me. I from what Khabib says, you would have to, really. I think from his history as well, and the way how he's looked, and especially since that Kevin Lee fight, he literally come out. He looked like a new fighter, didn't he? From then,
yeah.
You know,
I mean, Tony Ferguson, as a, you know, when you're thinking about it's not a big name, it's not a money fight, but at what point do you have to?
You talk about McGregor though.
Sorry, yeah, I was talking back about McGregor rather than.
Okay.
I mean, what do you do though with someone like, you know, Conor, when you think the only person I could see him fighting in terms of it making some sense and him still staying relevant off the back of a win would be Ferguson. But you know, to your point, Chuck, about Poirier, personally, the Charles Oliveira, or Charlie Olives, as people are now calling him, which I don't like.
Really?
It's a very strange nickname I've heard. But you know, Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier, to me, is the sleeper fight, where to me, that is one of the most exciting stylistic matchups that you could put together. And that's two real champions. If we don't have Khabib, it's one of those two that have earned it, you know?
Yeah, that's like the fair spot. That's the one. If you're going taking away promotion money and just going who are the best, I think those two have earned it. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And there's another thing we haven't mentioned is how Dustin is bigger than Conor McGregor. I think they said that when he was going in the cage, he weighed 177.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's a big boy. That's a big boy. Obviously, it's very wide shoulders, and so I don't think Conor had so much ease with grappling and managing him when they were in clinches as well. That makes such a big difference.
He did reverse him on the cage, didn't he? I thought that was sort of the interesting story at the start of the fight, was that in some ways it looked like Conor was stronger for a moment, because he was able to reverse the position and put Poirier's back against the cage. But you know, it didn't last long. And I think when you did see them next to each other, I agree, he looked huge. And Poirier, if you go and compare him to those 145 fights, but then compare him to when he joined 155, you know, his body shape has changed, and it is those
grown into it.
Shoulders. Yeah, he's really grown into it, and I think that he's now in the sort of prime position, you know, with his skills and just his sort of physicality. Really, I think he's really evolved. I think for all of us, we can all say, as you know, hardcore fans who love, you know, we've loved this sport for so many years. I can't think of many fighters that have just put the work in and just developed their mindset, because that's what I think made him lose the first fight against McGregor. He was in his head. He's developed his mindset, his body, and his physicality, but also the skills just through hard work. And I don't think that's over exaggerating it at all. I think that's what he's done, and I think that's why I've got so much respect for him.
But we have to remember that sort of similar story is of Max Holloway as well, because he lost to Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
and
but he was even younger. He would have been 21, 22 at the time.
Yeah.
But very much for Dustin Poirier, his loss to Conor McGregor was like defining moment in his career, where he knew that he needs to pick himself up and start training, harder, work on his mental health. And the rest is history. I mean, he had victory after victory after that, didn't he? And obviously, we're talking about two amazing fighters today that fought with Conor McGregor. And look where they are now.
Certainly.
I think, again, the other part that, almost to contradict what I said earlier is that, whilst I know that I've brought up a couple of times about how fickle people can be. And I think that, we mentioned Dan Hooker and saying that he had these wars with Poirier. Poirier had the war with Dan Hooker just, at his last fight. And I think that was something also the fight with Gaethje, and there's so many fights where you think, Alvarez, it's like where he got mauled by Khabib, but it hasn't affected Poirier really in any negative way, has it?
And took a step back.
Yeah, so it is an interesting one that I think we always need to try and distance ourselves from the fights a little bit in how recent they are, to make these snap judgments that, but I think one thing we can say is that Poirier didn't just look good because Conor didn't. I think Poirier just hit that new level.
Yeah. And I heard an interview with John Kavanagh, and he said that if they don't give Conor something in the UFC very soon, he might move to boxing. He might try something in boxing.
Too late. At his age, so there's just like when this, like there's just when they say about Pacquiao, it's ridiculous. Like that whole, because with Mayweather, I think he almost kind of goated him in a bit. He picked him off. He literally could have done what he wanted. Pacquiao ain't going to mess about with that. He's just literally from the off, just going to try and do him. Just that's ridiculous. Like, come on.
At what point do we have to? Yeah, I agree, Chuck. I think at what point do we have to say this is just harmful to his name? This is.
It's entertainment money, but if you're talking about skill, he's just not that. I wouldn't even put him against rank 20th guy. Let's have a look. Who is ranked number 20 in boxing today? What weight is he? McGregor.
Well, the thing is though, is that like at what point do you say, he's more than just a brand. He's not just there to sell whiskey. He's there ultimately, you would like to think, to try and go down as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And does going 0-2 and having a spotty record up and down in MMA, is that really what you want to leave behind? Yeah, sure, you can make $100 million along the way, but is that what you want your name to be? I'd like to think that it's not.
Yeah, because when he was saying he wasn't after the thing, that's what he was saying. Like, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to improve, and I'm going to try and get more in. That's what he was.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, Chuck, with boxing, whichever name you say now, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter because they're either not going to be a big enough name, and where that it really matters.
Yeah, no, it was more just. I agree. Just to give an outlook on how far out he is. So even to give him the number one guy is crazy, but to give him the 20th, then we could go, that guy will still kill him. So what's he going to do with these,
Yeah.
And we have to remember that his record from the last 6 fights is 3 wins, 3 losses.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
And this is the thing, that's what the casual fan remembers. That's what they hear is, I gather that his reputation in Ireland is not positive and that the fans do not love him and that actually he's seen as maybe representing Ireland in a negative way. And I think, you've then got to look at the fact that if he's then going in and going 3-3 and at what point do you start to say someone's a journeyman? I mean, at what point? And I know that sounds extreme to say to use that word with McGregor, but at what point do you start saying someone's just a journeyman? A very rich and very easy to promote and marketable journeyman, but at what point do you say the skills are not there? I don't know if that's yet. I don't think it is, but I think if he keeps doing this, it won't be long before he starts getting referred to in that way.
How much? Because he said that he trained really, really hard for this fight, and all the promotional materials. Oh my God, his body, his reaction, everything is absolutely amazing. And then he walks into the ring and loses like this.
It's just like going back to it. I know we keep discussing it, but I just think the game plan, like their leg kicks, I think they've seen it. Mike Brown knew what's going on, and they just worked it perfectly. That's all it is.
I think
I don't think we can go, oh, he wasn't prepared or anything. Like, I think it was just the game plan was perfect. Like, they knew what to do. Take away that left, fuck up that calf. They did it well.
And I think, again, you've got to make those comparisons, right? When you say, you know, it's very easy to say that he looked amazing against Donald Cerrone, but this is a 35-year-old, notoriously bad in the first round. Yeah. Slow starter, you know, to land. Yeah, he had this amazing accuracy, you know, 19 out of 20 strikes in the first round against Cerrone. But it's like, you expect that from McGregor. We're not saying he's not accurate, but it's a very different thing to, you know, beat Cerrone than it is to fight Dustin Poirier.
Who's in his prime, and he's just hit. Yeah, definitely. Like, Cerrone's going down, Poirier's just like hit that level ground where he's just raised to the, probably, you know, like we say, to his peak.
All right. So what about the next couple of months? If you look at the next UFC events, which of these make you dribble a little bit?
All of them. I love pretty much, apart from, and I mean, here I'm talking about the pay-per-view cards. I know that we've got things like Overeem and Volkov and things like that, but I mean, for me, it's all of the start of this year is amazing. I cannot wait for Usman Burns.
Oh my God!
I never thought I'd say that about an Usman fight, because I don't consider him a particularly exciting fighter, but I love watching Gilbert Burns and how he's developed into a threat everywhere, and
their teammates.
Yeah,
which is
they know each other inside out.
Exactly, spar all the time. Yeah.
Well, what about Volkanovski and Ortega? Who do you think has the edge there?
Well, you would think just, you know, on paper Volkanovski, but or like Ortega, like we're saying about developing fighters and they keep progressing at the moment and whatnot. Brian Ortega looked amazing last fight, so it's hard to say, because this happened to him against Holloway and etc. But you have to go against you know, your most recent fight, and his last fight he looked, you know, he looked sharp. So I would say Volkanovski still, but you know, we know how this game goes.
We always know the grappling's there as well with Ortega.
Exactly, yeah.
How many times has he come from behind, you know, to get a submission, snatch a neck at the
end of the
fight?
That Brandao fight, I remember he was losing that. I think he lost. I only remember seeing it at the time, but I thought he lost every round until that last round. Then I think he got a triangle, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
T-City.
Yeah, T-City.
Yeah.
So is Stipe and Ngannou already confirmed?
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's.
Can't wait. Cannot wait. I think, again, you know, you look at that and you'd like to think that Ngannou has developed. I wouldn't say it's in the same sort of way that you see at the lower levels. He's still just looking to land something big.
Hill kicks.
But I don't think I've ever been on the edge of my seat quite as much as I was in that first fight, because every single thing he throws, it was like, this could end this fight at any
Every
second.
Ngannou fight, I find myself like that. Because I'm like that, so like, because you know it could just end in a second, like that Rosa strike once. I was like, okay, just because if you're like looking at your phone or anything, it should just be over, which happens. You know, it was 12 seconds that fight, something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah. What about Izzy against Jan Blachowicz?
Your man.
I know. Yeah.
Are you a little bit biased on this then? Are you biased on this one, Remy? What do you think?
I am a little bit, yeah, because I really like him. The way he behaves, again, outside and inside the cage, he's just such a role model. He's just great. I like Izzy as well. It's just respect because of his just fighting style. He's just he's amazing. But it's so strange that because he's going up to light heavyweight, isn't he?
Yeah, for the title.
So what's going to happen with his title?
I think he wants to defend still, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it's a one-time only thing. I don't think he's got any plans to go up there. I think it's purely that, you know, nowadays people almost think if you're not a double champ, then it's not as impressive as. And I think that's partly just because of the UFC. You know, when they were bought by WME, it became a bit more entertainment focused, and so it's just a marketing tool. But I think that it's a great fight because it's that thing again of it's in similar way to McGregor Poirier, where you've got someone who's, you know, a hard-nosed kind of hard worker, known for just putting in the hours at the gym, and they're not particularly flashy. Even though I would say Poirier is, but you know, with Blachowicz, it's more he's not particularly flashy. He's just a hard worker and he's tough against, you know, the all singing, all dancing, you know, kind of Adesanya. And I think that's why it's an interesting matchup. Is it style or substance? What's more important? Even though Adesanya, I think, has both. But what's more important? Hard nosed or flashy?
I just think Adesanya's reading of the game, or striking particularly, it's just the next level to everyone at the moment. You know, it's this feints. It just, do you know what I mean? They're flawless. The way he can just goat you in with just little movements here and there. He's got the power, but I ultimately think Adesanya for that one. Me personally, yeah.
I think so too, but my heart says, yeah.
You sound like us with Bisping in every fight in the past. Yeah, but my heart says Bisping.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go against both of you on that. See, I just have a feeling, and I know that may seem ridiculous with Adesanya being 20-0, but you know, we've seen Silva go up and obviously, you know, beat Stephan Bonner, you know, or
Forrest Griffin.
At light heavyweight, but. I think that it's a bigger jump for Adesanya. I think he doesn't cut much to make 185 at all. And I mean, the size difference, it might surprise us. And I think that, yes, his feints are amazing, but we don't know what Blachowicz is going to look to do with that size. He might look to start with some wrestling that we're not expecting for all, you know, I'm not suggesting he's a world-class wrestler, but I just think that it's not going to be as simple. Even if Adesanya gets the win, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as simple as everybody thinks it's going to be.
You might be right, because there might be a difference in power. So yeah.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of power, you know, and
he's got a lot of power, but it's just I don't think he's slick enough for him.
No, he's very slow and
I just. When I say it's not just the feints, it's the way he attacks. It's even the way to bring them in, and it's just everything. It's reading the game when you see him. It's everything's got a purpose. There's no fat in anything. And
I made this comparison in the past because you mentioned Bisping. I think Blachowicz is like Bisping. He's an underdog. He's not stylistically very attractive. He very often fights with pure basics, so he will throw literally 2 or 3 combinations, nothing else. However, you know, you can very easily win with, you know, jab cross. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think he won the last 3 fights with a left hook. Didn't he?
Yeah. I think he did. I think
the Corey Hansen one was a slip straight. Straight right.
Like Luke Rockhold, that was a beautiful left hook, and I think he won another one with a. So there's beauty to simplicity as well. So and he's a tough boy as well, and his body kicks. Jesus Christ.
I mean, there's also the factor to consider. There's also that factor of, you know, Adesanya's kicks are amazing, and I mean, he can, you know, he's the sort of fighter that can throw out a question mark kick and land it and with ease, and he makes those hard to land techniques look easy to land. But again, I think you've just got to come back to this size, and can, you know, Blachowicz do enough early on? Can he counter a kick and get a takedown? And that can change the complexion of the fight. Again, I don't think he's looking for a takedown massively, but I don't imagine he's going to want to just stand, especially early on. And I think, yeah, and I think that could, but also does Adesanya's power carry up to 205? Is it as effective?
He was at that weight in kickboxing as well, wasn't he? I think he did middleweight, and I think he might have gone up to heavyweight for a few fights, you know.
But is it the same? Is it the same weight class, as in the same weight? You know, it might be the same name, but is it the same weight?
It would have been around this similar weight. It was higher what he was at middleweight.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think it'd be very interesting though that we're not going to know really till we see the weigh in and things like this how much of a size difference there is, because we might look at them. He's 6'4" after all. You know, Adesanya. He's taller than Blachowicz, and we might see that, you know, that size difference doesn't really play in, but we might see that it does play in.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I think. Well, we've just gone over an hour.
Yeah.
I can smell that tea coming through.
We've just discussed three fights. Yeah. I've got a confession to make.
You haven't recorded any of it?
No. I'm doing another one next week, but I'm doing it without you guys.
He's cheating on us, Chuck. He's cheating on us.
Who was it? Come on.
I'm going to tell you why I'm doing it without you guys, because you are massive UFC fans. But this weekend, there's Glory 77, and there's, I think, 4 or 3 title fights. So I invited Ryan, and I invited Paul Baxter, one of his fighters as well. So there's Cedric Doumbé. There's so many fights.
Well, Ryan would have some good insight, because Cedric Doumbé courted Ryan before.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much again. It's been great. It's not the same as in face-to-face, unfortunately. Yeah. But
It's what it is.
Have you had anything to drink or not?
Cup of tea?
I finished mine. If you can see it, I've finished mine.
Just Mr. Strong, that's
Mr.
it.
Strong.
Who bought you this one?
It was great. It was great though. Thanks though, Remy. That was good fun.
Yeah, we have to do it. We have to do it now that we know that we can do it. The technology allows us to do that. We have to do it regularly, maybe once every couple of weeks. And even if we don't record it and upload it on YouTube, it's nice to just have a chat about UFC and fighting in general.
Definitely.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. Lovely to see you guys.
And
to see you guys. Nice.
Hey.